Hey cinephiles, welcome back to Couch Kernels. I got a question for you. Have you ever seen a movie or played a game that was brilliant, like an instant classic that only comes around maybe once in a generation? If you're watching my show, I'm gonna guess the answer to that one is probably yes. Now, do you know what a mockbuster is?
Why am I asking you?
So, a mockbuster is a movie made to cash in on the success of a huge blockbuster, usually yielding horrible or at least subpar results. JonTron mentioned about the knockoff games and consoles that they're made to have a kid's older family thinking they're getting them this cool thing when really they're getting them garbage. I'm paraphrasing, but the sentiment could be extended to movies as well. Now, I want to specify that a mockbuster is not the same thing as a twin film. I'll give you a couple of examples here. Okay, so last time I talked about Titanic, but there's a mockbuster made 13 years later called Titanic 2. It was made by The Asylum, who honestly distribute a lot of them. Now, Dante's Peak was a big blockbuster movie about a volcano suddenly erupting in a highly populated area, but there was a twin film to that released within 2 months. A movie with a very similar premise. It was called Volcano. Wikipedia has a whole article devoted to twin films if you're interested, but a few other mockbuster examples are Transmorphers and Snakes on a Train. I hope that helps, but if it doesn't, just remember that twin films are usually released with very little time between them, and mockbusters are released either simultaneously if the Asylum can crap them out in time, or several years after the fact. In the case of today's movie, we went 6 years between the original and the garbage imitator. Today's movie is Mac and Me, the 1988 ripoff of E.T. that was largely funded by McDonald's. I seriously hope it's a coincidence that I decided to have McDonald's while rewatching it.
Oh my god, you're level 7 susceptible.
Anyway, today's criteria are plot and writing, acting, visual effects, product placement, and soundtrack. So this one starts off with an alien family on an obviously alien world. We're never told which one, but let's just go with Mars.
I claim this planet in the name of Mars. Isn't that lovely?
We see the dad alien insert a straw into the ground and suck out some clear liquid. With how this thing goes, we'll probably get told it was Sprite. Anyway, a NASA lander shows up and begins testing various stuff, and ends up sucking up the whole family in a vacuum cleaner. Yes, really. Obviously, it malfunctions and returns to Earth. We say it take off and fly through space unassisted, which I'm pretty sure isn't really possible, and then we see the NASA scientists taking it apart and testing everything to find the problem. The family gets out of the lander and escapes the containment of the lab, but they get separated, and through a series of really bad effects shots, the youngest one ends up with a family that's just moving into a new house in California. We see moving day stuff and the little alien wrecking the house.
Who made this big mess?
Until eventually, the youngest kid in the family and the girl that lives next door catch the alien. After a short time, they decide to use the clues he's given them to try and find his family. Now, I wish I could give them a kernel for this, since I remember actually liking this thing more than E.T. as a kid for some reason, but it's not really an original story, is it? I can't. No kernel here. So our main actors here include Christine Ebersole as Janet, the mom character, Jonathan Ward as Mike, the older brother, Lauren Stanley as Debbie, the neighbor girl, and Jade Caligari as Eric, the main kid who bonds with our alien character. Now, Miss Ebersole doesn't actually contribute much to the movie and is absent for a lot of it, mostly just there to get them to the house and complain when there's a mess. Otherwise, she's a fairly generic TV mom. Jonathan Ward is a typical meathead older brother character, a teenager who's only interested in girls and sports. Otherwise, he's just the older brother from E.T. who is coincidental. Lauren Stanley as Debbie is a little too willing to go along with things, and she's very sincere, but she reads lines really weird at times. And Jade Caligari was a good representation choice, as Eric has spina bifida and so does Caligari. But he reads lines terribly. I feel like they had to have gone with the worst takes in some cases. So, we really can't give them a Kernel for acting here. And now let's talk about the look of this thing.
If I had a dog with a face like yours, I'd shave his ass and teach him to walk backwards.
For starters, this movie doesn't really know what it is sometimes. It's a kid's movie, but at times it shows the bones of a mediocre horror. It also hasn't really aged well since 1988. I realize that means it's 34 years old, but I've seen older movies that look better, like pretty much anything by Georges Méliès, and all of that is over 100 years old. Seriously, just watch The Man with the Rubber Head after this. It'll only take you 2.5 minutes to watch the whole movie here on YouTube. And that came out in 1901. An example of what looks bad, the prime one in fact, are the puppets used for the alien family. The super not realistic or lifelike in any way rubber puppets. Near the beginning, the little one gets splattered on someone's windshield and they refer to it as an omelet with eyes. Which is probably more accurate than it should be. There's also a big chase scene around the 1 hour mark where the FBI is chasing after Eric and the alien. You know, not unlike when Elliot had E.T. in his bike basket. And in this scene, there are a few shots that are obviously done from behind for a reason, because it's extremely obvious that they used either a stunt double or a mannequin for the shots. And I get that VHS had lower quality video, but it's not exactly like I was watching the Blu-ray here. The visuals and effects look really bad, and I can't give them a Kernel. Now for the product placement. Now, product placement is bad, so we probably want a minimal amount to earn a Kernel here. So let's get into this and cover the brands that I noticed. There may be more, but this is what I caught. Eric, Mike, and Janet are from Illinois, so Eric and Mike are Chicago fans, with merchandise shown in several shots for the Bears.
What's the score?
Nothing.
Who's winning?
The Bears.
And the Cubs. I'm only going to count the two teams as one entry here, though. Pretty early on, we find out that the family likes their Coke products, with Eric drinking one in the car. But Mac and his family like it too, with Mac being lured by Coke like E.T. was with Reese's Pieces, and his family being revived later on with it. When the family gets to the house, we see the movers unloading a ton of strategically placed boxes that all read United Van Lines. In Eric's room, we see him eating a bag of Skittles, and then we see him change the battery in his remote control car, and for a brief shining moment, Energizer and Skittles get to share a product placement moment on screen. Oh, and Eric's TV? We linger on the logo for a second, so we know it's a Zenith. These all appear in the first 25 minutes. Other notable ones, of course, have the mom working at Sears, Debbie wearing a Rawlings football helmet when they capture Mac, and all the McDonald's product placement. When the boys drop their mom off at work, they decide to go to McDonald's for a Big Mac. Courtney, Debbie's older sister and a love interest for Mike, works at McDonald's. The alien is named Mac, for God's sake. Oh, did you want more? You know how I normally put the trailer for the movie up while I talk about the story? Did you notice today? It was the McDonald's birthday party dance scene, if YouTube let me get away with that. A whole dance scene that lasts almost 4.5 minutes out of a 99-minute movie. Like, that means that literally more than 4% of this movie is product placement. And this being a kid's movie, that's really sick. 8 companies, if you weren't keeping track. 8 companies that I noticed. I find that unconscionable, so not only is this thing not getting a Kernel, I'm going to issue it something new. Something that actually removes a Kernel from the movie's overall score. We're breaking out
the Mega Kernel.
Now, I have a question about the soundtrack. why is Alan Silvestri here? I have respect for Silvestri as he's done some great work with soundtracks like Avengers Endgame and the Back to the Future trilogy. But I want to know how they convinced him to do this. It's not his best work by any stretch, being derivative of his other, better work, as well as John Williams' iconic E.T. soundtrack, but he's here. And that confuses me. As for the rest of the soundtrack, the full songs rather than just the emotive musical bits, everything is generic 80s tunes by unknowns. Like, most of the time it doesn't even fit.
Wouldn't it be nice if the song under the credits had something to do with the movie you just saw?
I can't give the soundtrack a kernel here. Now let's tip out our bucket and see what we have. Well, in an unprecedented moment, we have -1 kernels. Now, here's the weird part. I've seen movies I enjoyed much less than this. It's actually slightly okay, even though it fails in every way at being a decent movie. Actually, you know, the absolute funniest thing about it? They were sure they were going to get a sequel. Anyway, let's move on to Name That Frame. First, let's reveal the answer from the My Bloody Valentine and Titanic videos. That movie was The Little Mermaid. Did you get it? Shout out to those that did. And now let's move on to our next round. If you look at my screen, we have a still for a new movie or TV show. Know what it is? Comment below. You have a few videos to come up with an answer. And while you're down there, if you have any comments, questions, or ideas, leave them there too. I try to answer everything. That's it for me though, but I'll be back soon. Maybe it's time to go see something new again? See you next time. Bye.